If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Can I have a picture with just the kids?
Absolutely.
And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
Oh, yay! I get to do Stranger Things again. I was quite excited when I saw this season's release date coming up, looming on the horizon like the impending societal collapse leading to nuclear apocalypse. Oh boy, I thought, either I'm gonna love this season because the first two were great, or at least I'm gonna have something to talk about. And that all hinged on whether season 4 had more problems than Boris Johnson's political career. We have a lot to talk about. Now, before we get any further into this, if you're one of those people that thinks the show is perfect or beyond criticism, this video's for you. I'm either gonna blow your mind by showing you the problems or give you a conniption fit so hard you'll be such a threat to human life I'll send you on a suicide mission to assassinate Bojo. Anyway, the first two seasons were pretty great, but I made a video shitting on season 3, because season 3 was a fucking mess. We had a mystery we already knew the answers to, Hopper and Joyce were lobotomized to become completely different people, and the Russians were taken straight off the set of Austin Powers. So is season 4 better than season 3? Yeah, but the more I watch it, the more I feel like they've only redeemed themselves from being merely okay to kinda good with some moments of brilliance. Now, don't get me wrong, they fixed a lot of stuff here. The mystery actually unfolds in front of us instead of happening 3 hours after we figured shit out, and some of the storylines are fantastic. But as the rewatch started, I soon began to realise that things still aren't quite right. There are far too many characters with interwoven plot threads, a villain from an off-season of Doctor Who, ridiculously cringe bullying scenes, and horror sequences that are about as scary as the average episode of the Teletubbies after dropping 5 tabs of acid. Oh shit, oh fuck, no, this is so much worse. Now, the one thing to remember is that this video is coming from a fan, not some methed up cretinous hyper fan that goes to the Stranger Things experience, buys a Stranger Things watch or the officially branded Nancy Wheeler shower water, but as people are giving these episodes 9s on IMDb, I feel like we all need a bit of fucking grounding. Anyway, from the weird and the wacky to the confusing and sometimes TV smashingly infuriating, we're going to be exploring the wonderful rollercoaster ride of Stranger Things Season 4. Every good show needs a good villain. The villain can make it amazing or tank it so hard that you never want to watch it again. And with Season 4, our villain is Vecna, a CGI worm man. As the main villain of this season, and as it's later revealed, the entire show, Vecna has to be set up correctly in order for both seasons 4 and 5 to work properly. In some ways they do this pretty well, and in others they fuck it up completely. While I like that he knows the characters and the things that scare them, he gets annoying because he keeps repeating names like an overly friendly customer who keeps reading your name tag.
You talking to me?
I think this was meant to make him more threatening because it implies a level of intimacy, but this would only have worked if they didn't make it mad infuriating because he says it at the end of every fucking sentence. I fucking get it! His motivations are a bit whack too. Don't get me wrong, I like that they revealed how all of these characters are actually the same guy, but not only is it a shitty, overplayed cliche for the villain to do an albeit well-performed 10-minute evil speech about why he's a murdering scumbag, they made the decision to hit this supernatural being of immense power, who's now the mindflayer by the way, with motivations extracted from Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. This shit comes out of nowhere, man. Mans wants to kill people because, like, fuck society and shit. Wait, hang on a second. So I can't imagine this kid being anything more than a cringy little incel.
I want any women fuck me.
after realizing that the only reason why the mind flayer looks like it does is because this guy fucking loves spiders. Fucking hell. It doesn't help that he's introduced in some really lackluster horror scenes. Stranger Things dabbled with this in season 1, but it was never amazing at it. Horror is at its best when you draw out scenes to their absolute limit, cranking up the tension before you hit the audience with a jump scare or something. You see, horror's kind of like any scatty drum and bass tune out there. While some gurning shitheads in a rave won't care if the song starts after the drop, you would miss up the slow build up to a climax and then a release. Like wanking into a sock. In crafting these songs, they start out slower, maybe with just some light beats and a vocalist. It slowly starts to build up and up. More instrument tracks are brought in, a more complex bass line. The song starts to get faster, and you feel that tension, right? It's going up and up and up and up. Up, 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 up.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's what good horror's like. This is not so with Season 4. We establish very early on that Vecna tends to attack when the character's alone, but because of this, these scenes become predictable, especially after we've already seen 2 people die. It doesn't help that they decided to add a visual or audio cue to almost every single Vecna scene before he shows up. So instead of surprising us, they're now announcing, "Scary scene now!" completely wrecking the tension, so there's none of that signature feeling that good horror gives you. These scenes are our introduction to Vecna, so instead of him being scary or threatening, I just get frustrated because now I want to pimp slap someone whenever I hear that fucking grandfather clock. No! Then, as in Season 3, we see way too much of this guy way too early. In Episode 1 we see 2 visions, and in the 3rd we meet Vecna for the first time. This repeats almost identically for Fred Benson in the next episode and for Max in the 4th. And while this, alongside the mystery, is a decent introduction to the villain, this choice makes him less threatening because we've seen him a bunch of times and he's already predictable, which is the exact opposite of what we need if we're setting up the main villain of the entire show.
Smell that, Max? That's actually shit.
Now, this could be easily fixed. Instead of us seeing Chrissy's final vision in the trailer, we should see it exclusively from Eddie's point of view.
You're beautiful.
So he leaves to go find her that spicy ketamine. Fun fact! Kids are sometimes given... No, I can't do it that way. Fun fact! Kids are sometimes given ketamine as a pre-med before they go under general anaesthetic. Not only does it calm them down so they don't overdose by hyperventilating and inhaling GA gases like a stoner after payday, it can sedate them so doctors can get the needle into them if they're doing it via IV. So if you were ever put under GA as a kid, there is the potential that before you fell asleep, you were monging out in a fucking K-hole.
Fuck you.
Anyway, Eddie gets that spicy ketamine and he walks back into the room with Chrissy just standing there. Ironically, like she's already in a K-hole.
Hey, you good?
He tries to wake her up, freaking out as the scene gets more and more intense as he realizes that something's wrong. Then, a good opportunity for a jump scare by the way, she fucking flies into the air, slams into the ceiling as Eddie shits himself. Then, all of a sudden, she snaps like you're
testing the tensile strength of a crow's neck.
And that is how we end the episode. We do something similar for Fred Benson, where we cut away before Vecna shows up and just show his death in the real world. Then, when the characters start to clue in and associate it with Vecna, he's not something we're already aware of. He's a complete mystery, but is still clearly a threat through his actions. In doing this, we now add way more tension in episode 4 for when Vecna targets Max. Not only is he now coming after a character that we know and like, we don't know what needs to happen in the last vision for her to die. So once Max enters that last vision in the graveyard, all bets are off and shit has just got real. Billy walks up, chatting shit, and then Max falls, looks up, and holy shit, what the fuck is that? CGI Worm Man! The rest of this sequence would play out as normal, but he's way more threatening because it's ours and Max's first introduction to him, which entails him capturing and almost killing a main character. Fucking up Vecna's introduction is worse by an order of magnitude because this guy is now the big bad for the entire fucking show. I like that we've now got a proper villain with lines and a history with the characters, but everything we've seen since season 1 is now irreversibly entangled with this reveal, and they set him up this poorly. we've taken this fucking Lovecraftian nightmare which had such an amazing potential for insane supernatural motivations and abilities, but now he's a guy called Henry. Incel Henry.
Cow shit.
I don't think it would be controversial to say that Stranger Things has played it safe since season 2, but this season is the safest yet. There were some great ideas that could have worked, but instead of building upon them and giving us something interesting, everything's feeling safe and stagnant. I feel like part of this is the change to a focus on plot progression, reveals, and cool moments. However, it feels like they haven't given the characters enough room to breathe while the show's feeling bloated at the same time. Apart from Max, can anyone tell me what characters had interesting arcs this season? Eleven's could have been, if they focused on her learning to live in the real world without Hopper, but they instead focused on her thinking she's a monster, spurred on by her hitting someone who clearly deserved a fucking Mortal Kombat finisher. Her other arc at Project Nina was kinda stupid. She learnt that Brenner was the bad guy, even though part of her arc in season 1 was realising that Brenner was the bad guy.
Bad.
Hopper's character development was I want to die in episode 5 going to I don't want to die in episode 6. Mike just learnt to say I love you. Lucas realised that being popular isn't all that great in an arc that was ignored for 5 episodes. Will is clearly going to be announced as being gay, but it had no payoff in this season. Nancy, Steve, Robin and Jonathan were all caught up in stagnant love story crap. Eddie could have had a great redemption arc doing something actually useful, but he died. More on that later, and the rest didn't develop at all. There's a reason why Max's arc, and maybe a bit of Eddie's, resonated with people so much. But what this season has forgotten is that the Upside Down and the supernatural shit was meant to be the seasoning on a mystery and character drama, not the focus of the fucking show. The things that made season 1 and parts of season 2 so great was that the show was primarily about the people. Why do you think the first episode of each season is almost entirely set in the real world outside of the supernatural shit? It was to set up relatable arcs, to invest us in the characters so we give a shit when things start to happen to them. And then the paranormal stuff acted as a vector for character development. Now, we wreck the pacing of the finale with 10-minute exposition dumps about the villain and the Upside Down. And when you change the focus of the show to progressing the plot through these things, and forget to focus on the characters, it all falls flat. And what that leads to is a loss in the show's emotional intelligence. A great way to get us invested is to hit us emotionally, and Stranger Things used to do this effortlessly. But season 4 misses out because they mostly either ignore this or mishandle it, like dropping a fucking toddler.
Man, when you drop too much as a child, or what?
I was really happy when I saw they were going to go down a mental health route for this season, with Max and Elle still clearly traumatized by the shit they've gone through. But I don't think we even hear Elle mention Hopper's name after episode 2 or 3, as she has all this superhero shit to do. I don't know why they couldn't have implemented Hopper's death into this storyline about her having to relive traumatic memories, but when they reunite at the end of the season, there was practically no setup for most of it, and I only found it emotional because of the characterization from last season's, not this one. It also doesn't help that half of this plot thread is made up of scenes that are super cringe.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Now, this is a section I really didn't want to be making again. There's this one thing that I see all the time in film and TV that really fucks me off, and that's pointless flashbacks. As I said in my season 3 video, flashbacks, like any cinematic tool, can be amazing when they're done right, but fucking infuriating when they're done wrong. A good flashback will give us new information or give an opportunity for character development. A bad flashback makes it seem like the writers think the audience is fucking stupid. Almost any instance of a pointless flashback to things we've seen before can be done in more creative ways through an actor's performance or smart callbacks with cinematography. Otherwise, they're putting these flashbacks into scenes either for people who have never seen the show before, or to cater to the Zoomer shitheads who can't pay attention because TikTok and Instagram Reels have skull-fucked their attention spans. And guess what? Most of the people tuning into Season 4 have already seen the show before. This time around, it's even worse than Season 3. As the season focuses a lot on previous events, especially due to the nature of how Vecna attacks his targets, there's so much opportunity to give us insight into how the characters have reacted to these traumatic experiences. They almost did a good job with this, especially with Max, but her story could have been even better if I wasn't being pulled out of the show constantly because they've shown us Billy's death for the 15th fucking time. Or what about the constant flashbacks to the lab massacre? What was meant to be an incredibly impactful scene of this psycho going full Waco and killing a bunch of kids was ruined because they insisted on constantly showing it a bunch of times for no reason other than to really drive home this idea that Elle thinks she's a monster. As if we couldn't predict that one of the main characters who we've learnt to like for 3 seasons probably didn't kill a room full of children, and that it's definitely not a red herring for the weird incel guy we keep seeing who looks like he pays over $1,000 a month for OnlyFans feet pics.
Come on, Batch, is this really one of your main points? This sounds like a bunch of silly nitpicking.
Well, you'd be all but wrong, silly strawman viewer put into this video to make me sound smarter. Maybe it's less of a nitpick when I say that their tendency to put in these pointless flashbacks almost ruined the finale for me. Fucking Christ, man, don't you love it where there are these really intense scenes where we try and fail to kill off a main character or to reveal the big bad for the entire show, but they're too busy cramming in shots we've seen 12 times because they think the audience is so thick that they're unable to link the clear relationships to previous seasons. There are at least 9 pointless flashbacks in the season finale, 9 of them. And they're the editing equivalent of Vecna turning around and just fucking exposition dumping. I am the mindflayer. I possessed Will and Billy. I took your powers. I am the bad guy. There's no fucking creativity here at all. It's just there so the smooth-brained TikTok addicts in the audience can follow what's going on.
You gotta hit the blood.
Season 1 was fucking dark, man. We've got a kid imprisoned in a lab being developed as a weapon against the Russians and being punished if she refuses. Another kid goes missing and is presumed to be outright dead. His grieving mum goes through shit that could easily be a psychotic break, and a depressed alcoholic cop with a dead kid tries to piece all this shit together.
I'm certainly not gonna stop drinking. I mean, I physically can't.
There were moments of comedy and cutesy shit to alleviate this though, mostly through the kids. Their existence in the show helped to bring us out of that dark pit, and they were the foundation of the charm that has made Stranger Things so successful.
There's a slice left if you want it. Sausage and pepperoni.
Leave me alone!
Really, nigga?
But the kids experience some pretty heavy shit too. They watch what they think is their friend's body being pulled out of the water, they're pursued by government agents, watch as an 11-year-old fucking pops the heads off of a room full of people and then get attacked by a sentient glory hole. While there's some funny or uplifting scenes, they're there to give the show its character, and to stop it from being too depressing. They don't make up half of a fucking episode.
I heard a lot about your sister.
We get to seasons 3 and 4 and we start to swap between unserious or silly scenes intercut with horror or action with little to no regulation whatsoever. Now, this becomes less of an issue in the final few episodes, but I already had a problem in season 3 with shit like this.
I hate this fucking scene.
Enough.
Where they decided to put a music video into the climax of the season, which completely destroyed the tension and wrecked the tone of the finale. How can I take these events seriously if the characters don't? Now, you might be thinking that Eddie's guitar solo is basically the same thing, and you'd be fucking wrong. Not only does shit actually happen in the meantime, it matches the intensity of the scene because Master of Puppets fucking shreds. Now, season 4 doesn't have a moment this bad, but there's way too much comic relief still. This shit used to be limited to the kids and a couple of lines from the others. Now like half of them are funny. Argyle, Murray, Joyce, Robin, Erica, Yuri, there are so many now. You'll get shit like this at the start of episode 4 where we announce that Max is about to die, intercut it with this. And then go straight back to, oh, Max is gonna die by the way. Or what about this? A scene of Elle reliving memories from Hawkins' lab, arguably the most traumatic period of her life, and this one where Hopper believes that he's killed Joyce and is accepting his own death are intercut with a bunch of teens burying a dead body in the desert, but it's played retarded with the least funny stoner I've ever seen on TV.
Come on, guys, seriously. I've seen Mike's room look worse than this.
Aw, brutal, dude.
Nah, that one got me. They did at least remove the Austin Powers Russians from last season, but they couldn't help but to bring them back for at least one more scene. Don't get me wrong, this show needs comic relief, it's wired into its fucking DNA, but if you rewatch season 1, there's always a reason for it to be there and it isn't overdone. All of these scenes with the kids in season 1, or Steve becoming a parent in season 2,
Hey! Dickheads.
shine brighter because they're not just par for the course. Pacing this stuff gives more impact to those moments of levity, but also allows the serious scenes to be serious. Strange, isn't it? How the best episode of the season is the one where we actually establish the threat and take it fucking seriously. Putting a time limit on a character is a great way to ramp up the stakes, and they keep the tone consistent as the characters scramble to find options to save Max's life. But cutting stupid bullshit amongst the serious scenes makes everything feel like a fucking mess.
I don't need drugs.
Now, whenever you split up a story, there are always going to be some threads that are great and others that range from pretty decent to that Dawn sequence in Game of Thrones that was more akin to getting your cock caught in the zipper.
You want a good girl, but you need...
Because of this, when you have too many characters and too many plot threads, you start to slap the audience with pointless bullshit. As season 4 rolls on, there are moments where there are like 5 or 6 plot lines all running at once, but only a couple of them are necessary or interesting. In episode 6, for example, we have Elle, Hopper, California, the Hawkins kids, Joyce and Murray, the Vigilantes, and the unexplained angry American colonel. Having so many plot threads makes it hard to get immersed into one because they have to jump around like a 6-year-old crackhead to fit it in. I mostly loved the Hawkins stuff, with the mystery, the threat to Max's life, and the fact they had to plan around not having 11, but then we cut away from it and we have to wade through 20 minutes of less interesting shit before we get back to it. Like, what was the point of the California plotline between Elle getting taken and them saving her later? Like, yeah, they get one good scene with the one-take shootout, but that's about it. In essence, it's like they've jumped into an RPG and are doing a pointless side quest more akin to Home Alone than Stranger Things to waste time. There was clearly not enough content in this section because they're not even in episode 7.
That's actually shit.
That Russian storyline was all over the place as well and could have been cut down massively. While I actually quite liked this rather tragic scene where Hopper finally gets a taste of freedom but then gets recaptured and beaten, the rest of it was dragged out for no reason other than to give him something to do. The inundation of new characters into this show also takes the spotlight away from the other characters that have been there since the beginning. This was also an issue in season 3. I even put myself in a situation where I could get cancelled by the roving Twitter death mobs because I made this stupid mistake. Of course, I have to make the only black character in the show, the fucking sassy one.
The only black character in the show. The only black character in the show.
That's racist!
And the only reason I made this stupid mistake is because Lucas does practically nothing for the whole season, apart from giving very shitty relationship advice.
Max has dumped me 5 times.
And nailing a sweet headshot.
How do you like your ribs?
The worst of all of this, though, is Jason and the useless vigilantes. They give this guy so much screen time and this arc achieves fucking nothing! It could have been really interesting to show how the town reacts as the facade of normality dissolves away, but other than being a commentary on how misinformation in media and dogmatic religious beliefs can motivate unjustified violence, wanky words, this storyline was fucking pointless. The only reason this arc exists at all is to give Lucas and Eddie something to do until they're called upon later in the season, and so something smashes Max's tape in the finale.
No!
But what this storyline does is extend the runtime of every single episode of the season and helps to wreck the pacing of the finale. Oh, how I've been looking forward to talking about this one. One of my favourite things to see in a film or show is when adult writers are clearly unable to write scenes with kids in them. Now, this is rather surprising considering this show has had some of the best written and acted performances from kids, but holy fuck does some of this seem like they've lost their touch, namely, cringe bullying. The interesting thing is that season 1 pretty much nailed this. Mike, Dustin and Lucas being bullied was pretty tame at the start, but it felt grounded and still clearly impacted them. Troy didn't plan some sad, overly elaborate plot to bully Mike in front of the school. Mike actually initiates this interaction, and the fact there were other people there is only relevant in that it leads to Troy trying to get revenge.
Dude, Troy peed himself.
You're fucking dead.
While this scene with the knife may seem excessive, we have seen his character progress to this point throughout the season, so it makes it understandable. No such luck with season 4. There are 3 or 4 bullying scenes involving Eleven in this season, and I burst out laughing for almost every single one of them. The first one isn't so bad, other than the teacher not shutting this blonde bitch down because she has less control over her class than Bojo had over his staff while snorting cocaine out of Priti Patel's decrepit sexless arsehole. This bitch fucking assassinates the developmentally stunted kid.
He is a squirrel.
In front of the entire class, and she just like seems fine with me. The second one's fucking jokes because of Elle's scream. I mean, it was meant to be sad or like embarrassing or something, but in reality the show just fucking parodied itself. The one in Hawkins' lab? Oh boy! In some ways this does kind of work. These kids are all parentless, being brought up in a place not dissimilar to Prince Andrew's sex dungeon under Buckingham Palace.
Are you up for some more lessons?
They're not going to have the same level of social development as other kids their age, and this could easily lead to violent outbursts like this. But not only do the other kids have no investment in this conflict whatsoever, because this sneering shit stain also beat them in the competition, the way this is filmed, the way this is filmed.
Pizza time.
Yeah.
Now, you might think that we are done here, but alas, we are not. We get onto the roller rink and we descend into a new level of shit show completely unexplored in the history of mankind. Now, I'm sure this comes as a massive surprise to all of you, but I was bullied as a kid. At a pretty rough school too.
I'm gonna tie your dad up and we're gonna fucking bomb him!
But I have never experienced, seen, or heard of anyone who would set up such a fucking wank bullying scheme like this in my life. They also never go to these ridiculous lengths. They'd call you names and harass you, maybe even kick the shit out of you if they're really spiteful, but nothing to this ridiculous extent. Why would you go to all of this effort just for a weak sauce prank of skating around her and just throwing a drink on her?
Wipe out!
You guys got a fucking DJ, a cameraman, lighting effects, and like 7 of your mates to get in on this, and that's the best you can do? Have some fucking ambition.
I'm gonna smash you in there! Sit down!
The only reason that this happens in the first place is that she just stands in the center fucking cowering in fear, when in reality she'd just be like, what in the Jesus fucking Christ are these retards doing? And then just skate away. This girl opened up a gate to a hell dimension for a sleep paralysis demon, and something you really don't want to see when the LSD kicks in. I really doubt she'll be scared of this spiteful cunt. And so, we get onto the finale. Oh, the finale. What the fuck was that? Why is it 2.5 hours long? Now, the pacing of this season has been pretty inconsistent, but here it's all over the fucking place. We have pointless scenes that serve no purpose at all. Vecna stops his evil plan every 2 minutes so he can chat shit. And Jason turns up so Lucas can realise his talent for boxing as he's got an adamantium chin. So many scenes could have been cut or at least streamlined. The scene with the skateboards, Jason shouldn't have even been in the show, let alone this episode, and Vecna should have hardly talked at all, at least up until this point. Because of all of this bloat towards the climax of the episode, we get some mad pauses for certain characters. During Vecna's rants, we halt Hopper getting chased by a demo dog, Eddie getting swarmed by bats, and Lucas's World Championship title fight.
Oh my god!
There's one that's even worse though. So let's play a game. Welcome to... Tonight's prize-winning question is, in the finale of Stranger Things Season 4, how long are Nancy, Steve and Robin getting choked out against the wall for? Is it A, 1 minute, B, 5 minutes, C, 30 minutes, or D, 15 minutes?
Dragon! Whoa, no.
Ding! That's right, it's C, 30 minutes. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. And so we get onto the only thing that has been pretty much universally criticised, and that's the cop-out with Max's death. And I agree, this choice was fucking terrible. Now, plot armor has been a problem since Season 2, and while it's important to note that killing characters isn't the primary thing that influences the stakes, it fucking helps. How can I feel like these people are in real danger if 3 characters are being choked out for half an hour of screen time? The main problem here, though, is that they obviously hint at things going wrong.
It might not work out for us this time.
And what that does is it draws attention to it. We then get one of the most emotionally impactful scenes of the season to wrap up one of the best plot lines the show's ever done.
I want to die. I'm not ready.
You're not gonna die. Please just hang on.
I want to go on.
And I was like, damn. I wanted her death to happen in episode 4, but that was pretty fucking good. And while it's mega depressing, it fits in so well with her arc for this season that I was ready to forgive a lot of the silly bullshit we went through to get here. But then, the Duffer Brothers commit a cardinal fucking sin. They introduced resurrection from death. Something that completely wrecks tension because the audience is aware that dead characters can just come back, in a show where the biggest criticism is that it severely lacks stakes because characters never die. The worst thing though is that they wanted the emotional impact of a sad character death but didn't have the follow through to just kill her. They did the same thing in Season 3 with Hopper and I fucking hated it then too. But this time they also decided to do so in a way that actively draws attention to it. Now, ignoring the implication of resurrection for next season, the decision to revive Max has caused a lot of knock-on problems. Not only did they decide to fuck up the ending of, again, one of the best plot lines the show's ever done, their clear reluctance to kill any of the original cast from the first 2 seasons means they have to kill newer characters, which, like Bob's death, makes them predictable and less impactful. And in this season, Eddie dies. Which makes no fucking sense. Not only does he die just because he wanted to make a stupid point about not running away, his death had 0 impact on the plot at all. He stays in the Upside Down to buy more time. But the others are currently being choked out against the wall and can't do shit anyway. Even if he left, the bats wouldn't be doing anything, so his death was pointless. Also, instead of committing to a death that has been built up over the course of the season and fits the tone of the finale, we're cramming in an unnecessarily random one of a character that had tons of potential, otherwise no one would have died at all.
I didn't run away this time, right?
I know you didn't, buddy, but considering the condition you're currently in, I think it might have been a good idea, mate. The other knock-on problem of Max's resurrection is that it absolutely massacres the last 20 minutes of the episode. After she dies, the gates to the Upside Down tear through Hawkins like cheap tights in a porno.
Here you are. I hope you like it big sausage style.
But then are presumably closed again once she's revived because monsters weren't roaming the town. But then they reopen the gates again right at the end of the episode, which is completely unexplained, meaning that reviving Max had practically no effect on the overarching plot, other than keeping a character alive and allowing for 20 minutes of ridiculous tonal shift after ridiculous tonal shift. We go from destroyed town to smiles and happy reunions, back down to the darkness of an almost dead kid in a coma, return to the highs of lesbian courting, down to telling people their family member died, back up to the soaring highs of Elle and Hopper reuniting, which then gets slammed back down with the return of Vecna. Now, you might be asking, Batch, what the fuck does this have to do with Max? Well, if she died, these last 20 minutes would have been completely different. The California lot returning wouldn't have been smiles and happy reunions if Max died, would it? Firstly, their friend's dead. Secondly, their town would have been an intermediary for the invasion of the fucking hell dimension. Yeah, we could still have a glimmer of hope with Hopper and Elle reuniting, but it could have been so much more powerful if he returned to comfort her after she watches her friend die. Wouldn't it have been so much better to finish this penultimate season with the characters beaten and dejected, to really ramp up those stakes for the final season, to show that Stranger Things still has the sack to put their characters in challenging situations? Well, I think it would have been better. But to quote my season 3 video, they should have just grew some fucking balls.
No. Out of all of my brother's friends, you're my favorite.
You've always been my favorite. There's a slice left if you want it.
Leave me alone!
You're my favorite. Leave me alone!
Fucking hell, this was a long one, eh? Now, this outro is going to be a bit more wanky words, but considering like 70% of this video was just memes, I'd appreciate it if you'd indulge me for a minute. I feel like Stranger Things has lost a bit of its identity. It's no longer the intimate, self-contained, character-focused mystery that it once was. It's now a sprawling epic of grandiose proportions that tries to mix end-of-the-world stakes with the grounded feeling of previous seasons, which are things that feel somewhat incompatible. In Season 1, the inciting incident is that Will is abducted by a monster and a few Hawkins residents die. By the end of Season 4, we're fighting Satan with the power of friendship because Stranger Things is one pair of abnormally massive underage tits away from being a fucking anime. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with this scope creep because the show has built us up to this point naturally over the last 4 seasons, but in doing so they've lost the human element and the ability to really explore some of these character arcs that could have been really effective. We've mostly lost this element despite the first 2 seasons having all sorts of shit like this, and the Duffers clearly have a talent for this sort of character writing because they've done it so well before and are still doing it in some ways now. But instead of allowing this to remain a core part of the show, it's now being distilled into one character arc. We're now prioritising the basic plot, which was, you know, the less interesting stuff, instead of the character writing that has brought this show to a higher level. Anyway, I think I need to accept that this is just how Stranger Things is now. But with the poor pacing, the change in focus, the loss of emotional intelligence, and the poor introduction of Vecna, I can't help but resent that fact. Yes, the show's still pretty good. The actors' performances are still fantastic. The uncovering of the mystery of Vecna was kind of fun, and there are some amazing moments. People aren't wrong to like this show, and who the fuck am I to say otherwise?
This guy's telling me not to enjoy this.
Part of me is amazed by the cultural impact Stranger Things has had, and the raising of a song from 1985 to the top of the charts is a testament to that. But it gets to me when I see people saying shit like this because they're busting mad nuts over a decent but safe season despite it having some clear and obvious problems. And I think that's where my disappointment comes from. If the show was outright garbage now, I wouldn't give a shit, but we see glimpses of really cool ideas and interesting directions for characters being brought down simply by somewhat dodgy writing, focusing on the wrong things and not having the balls to commit to taking risks. And as I see people run and rave about how good they think this show is, it just makes me wish that I could switch off and enjoy it in the same way. But as I can't do that, all I can say is that Stranger Things Season 4 isn't bad, it's just not as good as you think.
Down, but I'm alright. I'll be chasing dreams till the end of time. Those dangerous ways.